So right flight when. Other names include red fled, buy blue, left left. I'm not convinced that it'll happen, but first the coronavirus and then this. It's a thought I had about what's been happening in the United States of America. I was talking to a friend of mine, and they live in the United States, and they were talking about going all the way to Canada. And they were living in a place that didn't really have even as major of an issue with the recent riots and protests and social unrest that has been going on in the United States after the unfortunate death of one George Floyd in Minneapolis. Now, I think by the time I post this, I don't know exactly when I'm going to post this. Probably try to do it in a couple of days after actually uh, recording this. I'm recording this on June 5th. Um, I think it's going to pass. I think part of why this has picked up this much is a myriad of things, but that's also part of why I had this thought. The coronavirus shutdowns, you look at the cities that were most affected, reportedly by the numbers, and had some of the most severe shutdowns, both in the United States of America, and then you look at the rest of the world, the protests and things like that have gone to those other places, but definitely not been as violent. When you talk about the actual rioting, the actual violence that has occurred in this, you look at those cities, and there is a correlation with the actual high amount of shutdowns and restrictions that were being laid out during the actual coronavirus pandemic shutdown. So that's one thing that got people to, I think, they were looking at their cities and looking at other places and they're saying, okay, maybe, I mean, we're doing it here, there, we're doing it there. And then now you add this on top of all of that. And you look at the violence, and you have some people. I lived in New York City for some time, I still have a lot of friends there, and it leans a lot to the left. A lot of people coming out to the New York City were saying, look at all these things we're dealing with. Why is the country reopening? I'm like, okay, we get it. New York City seems to have a lot of problems going on with coronavirus. But the rest of the world, other places in the United States of America, shouldn't have to stay closed because New York City is closed. But people were like, why are people doing this? Why are people doing that? They're talking about, oh, we need to protect minority communities who are disproportionately actually affected by this because they have their idea of what the world is. A lot of these people mostly deal with white people in their lives, whatever they define as white. If they self-identify as white and self-identify other people as POC, the POC in those areas, it is there's a lot of different diversity in the areas, but you will find neighborhoods that are somewhat segregated and things like this, and that does happen. People, birds of a feather, do like to flock together. In groups occur. Black people in general like to, if you are someone that identifies yourself as black, you like something enough about the culture of blackness that you say I am a proud black person, there is a good chance you will also search out other proud black people. Now, the weird thing on the other side, if people would talk about their ashamedly white guilted into their white privilege, do they also go around and search out people or they search out tokens of other people? But it turns out I don't necessarily trust their white guilt. Part of that I think is something that it's like if you can say I have white privilege, then no matter what, just by simply being white, you have something better than all the POC out there, and you can feel that. So there's some mixed thing in there, but that's neither here nor there. But it turns out a lot of these areas, certain areas, it's just white people. It's predominantly white people, and a lot of these people were saying we need to protect all these other people who are being hurt by this. And then it turns out this whole riots and protests come out, some of them go out in the streets. I talked about this in a separate story, how some white couple had gone out, and the man wrote a tweet or a post or something. It was like, I went out and I brought supplies for you. I supported you. I used my white face as a barrier against the police. And then when me and my wife were going back in our vehicle, we stopped in the actual traffic and we weren't pushing through people on the highway. And then once we were finally allowed to go through the highway, some of the POC who were protesting, and they still called them protesting, started smacking our car and yelling at us, and it feared me. It made me scared, and it ruined the whole day for me. And he still thought the need to say, and I do understand you were scared, but still, I hate you for this. So you see, there is that aspect in there where that happens, and this has happened to a larger extent, where they're like, yeah, we're protecting these people. These people are peaceful. These are just nice good boys and girls, and nice men. There's no reason they didn't do nothing wrong, and then a lot of those people are in the streets, right by their doorsteps, in New York City, the way apartments are, there's normally stores and stuff like this. Like you go to Fifth Avenue, you go to some of these places that were looted. People actually live in those apartment buildings above. When you go to like Manhattan, these places, and but it also happened in Brooklyn. It also happened in Harlem. It also happened in predominantly uh, black communities. In so this stuff was happening everywhere. But seeing this in cities, you're living there, and it's actually there, and you're seeing this kind of stuff. I think there's going to be people thinking, we're going to leave. You know, they're talking about white flight. They're talking about, oh, there was a time when white people left the inner cities and went to the suburbs. They're calling that white flight. And I've talked about this, I have a separate video coming up with this, about how when they come back, it's gentrification that's bad. They leave, it's white flight, and that's bad. But this now, I'm wondering, is this going to be a situation where politically it's right flight? People who lean politically to the right are going to leave. One of the earlier videos I had on my channel, I'm going to try to leave a link here, was just about cities versus countryside, the different mentalities and the different living structure and the sort of people it attracts. And then once those people are there and you grow up in that community, I'm, unlike everybody else, I'm not unique. I'm just a result of my life. But the way I grew up has been somewhat different. But I think if you took 100 people and you raise them pretty much as close to me as possible, we're spending time in the same locations, things, we would pretty much turn out to be the same way. And this is the same thing I used to think about someone like Michael Jackson. If you took Michael Jackson and took 100 kids and had them live Michael Jackson's life, I think 90% of them would turn out like Michael Jackson, assuming they had the same basic talents and things like that with their music. I'm talking more like the mental, actual Michael Jackson effects and things like that. We react to different things. Just different people have different specific situations that they experience, but we are shaped by our environment and experiences in that way. So I was thinking, when you have cities and things like this, people are shaped by the environment. Part of the reason when I meet people and people say, oh, you're Kenyan, you're this, I'm like, chances are, if you're meeting me and I'm not in Kenya, there's a chance I'm not like your average Kenyan, because your average Kenyan stays in Kenya because they're completely comfortable and okay with staying in Kenya. If you meet somebody, if you're in New York City and you meet somebody who's, oh, you moved here from Alabama. Oh, now I know how people are in Alabama. It's like, no, people in Alabama stay in Alabama because they normally like Alabama. So people who leave Alabama find reasons to be like, I'm not really comfortable here. Let me go see how New York is, and they'll be a little different. And they'll bring some spice and things like that there. But regardless, and then people start seeing, oh, how many people were actually arrested in New York City from outside of the city that these protests and riots, and they're like, oh, it's like 1 in 7 or something. I'm like, oh, that's not really that high, because you just walk around New York City in general. There's a lot of people visiting and work, even coming for work and just coming to look at the place. So in general, I think you walk around New York City, 1 in 7 is probably the amount of people that you find that don't actually live in New York City. But taking New York City for example, people are raised in that place, but there's still people. There's a constant turnaround. There's people coming in from the suburbs, from the outskirts, from the rural areas, and there's people moving back out. I think we might see a thing where people start moving back out, where people start saying, I don't want to live in this city life, both from the shutdowns, from people seeing how reliant they were on different rules and how little freedom they had, and how it was so easy to take away some of those freedoms, or how they could be responsible, but because they're living so close, cheek to jowl with so many people, that if somebody messes up, that could affect all these other people. And they might feel like, do I really need this anymore? Do I really need to be in New York City? There might be certain things they thought they were getting from these bigger cities, these blue areas, these places where they collect people together, and they've noticed that over this time of the shutdown, they've been able to actually find alternative ways to still have those benefits, or try out different areas, or see how other things are done, or find out these things are not that important. And then you add the violence, you add this very visceral threat and destruction and things like that, and that could lead to people leaving. And the red flag, that was red versus the red is a color that's normally associated with with the Republicans. It could also be flee the red, or fled the red. Fled the red. Now, fled the red could be more like fleeing socialism, fleeing communism, fleeing these kind of people with that kind of political bent in that sense. Buy blue could just be the buy blue, like I'm leaving the blue. Just leaving those blue places. Bye. Bye, you people who are blue with the Democrats, we're leaving you. Left is also just, all that's left is the left. When you see there, it's you see left the left, or you're leaving the left, or in those cities, it'll just be more increasingly socialist, increasingly Democrat, increasingly just to the left. And this could be something that could happen. Now, I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm just pointing out that I talked to some people who are already like, we're going to leave. I'm looking at this more from the outside and saying, okay, I don't think it's as bad as you think it is, but then the culmination of these things and the fact that this was happening already, and just in general, I don't think cities in general, the way they're structured, is really that organic. I think part of it is due to the state system that mutates migration patterns, concentrations of power in certain areas, the old realities pre information age where people had to be close to the centers of certain things in order to actually achieve certain things. The way the road system was built, which again, the road system was built mostly to have the intercontinental ballistic missiles going around. So the actual use of the reason to have the roads that way, the fact that the country was developed and people were having the cars, the American dream. There's a lot of things mixed together that I think people are waking up and realizing, coming back to nature and realizing this isn't really that organic. There's other ways we can do things. We've been sold this is the way we should do things. We've been sold that New York City is the place to be, but it's a good place to visit. But is it really a good place to live? Even at the best of times in the recent years, when there wasn't the coronavirus, when there wasn't this level of violence going on there, was it really that good? How much different is it than living in Indianapolis? How much different is it than living in Kansas City? When it comes down to it, no matter what city you're in, chances are you still have your close group of 10 really close friends, and you have an outside circle of 200 people. You have the few stores you go to, the few locations you go to. If you have a family, you make sure you have the schooling. A lot of these things can be achieved, so I think we are going to see that. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a right flight where it's going to be politically this way, but I do think there will be some kind of thing where people who are more predisposed to being on the political right will be more likely to leave some of these centers, these centralized population locations, after the things that have gone on in the last couple of months. So let me know what you think about this as part of my shorty series where I just expand on short thoughts and then I engage you with it. I appreciate you taking your time to come listen. Should be links below to a merchandise store. There's also one-time donations on PayPal. Much appreciated, but I really appreciate you taking your time. Let me know. Are you living in a place where over the last couple of months with the things happening, you've considered leaving majorly or majorly because of those reasons? Or were you considering leaving already and then these things added to them? Or were you considering moving to certain locations and then after you see what has happened over this time, you're thinking, okay, maybe I won't go there or I'll go somewhere else? Or just let me know what you think about that. Until next time, goodbye.